I wanted to talk about T-post drivers for just a minute. These are the two that I currently have. I actually used to have another one and I can't for the life of me find it. I looked for it this morning to show it to you, but it was one that it looked a lot like this one. I got it at Tractor Supply, I don't know, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, a long time ago. And it had the handles on it like this, and I loaned it to a guy who loaned it to a guy. And he actually, when it got returned, both of the handles were gone, and he had used it like a sledgehammer on the side and just beat it all over. And so it had all these metal shards all over it, and anyway, it's the worst thing ever. But I had this one and I had that one, and I used it for years. But one thing I learned from that was without these handles on there, I actually liked it better because I live in a place with really hard ground. So I've got about an inch of topsoil and then maybe 2 or 3 inches of clay subsoil, and then shale is usually what I'm driving T-posts into. And so when you're holding on to these handles, you get a really hard jar when you hit it, and over time, if you're driving 100 T-posts, your hands get to hurting. And what I realized was without these, if you just grab it and you slam it up and down, your hand slides up and down it, and I found it better. So anyway, that other one was so destroyed that I made this one. And this one is it's got an 8-pound sledgehammer head up here, which, if you're like me, you probably have 3 or 4 of these laying around that you knocked handles off of years ago. Because at one point in time, you could buy a sledgehammer cheaper than you could buy a handle for a sledgehammer. So, if you broke your handle off, you just bought a new sledgehammer. So anyway, I had several of these, and so this is just a piece of conduit, and overall it's 32 inches long, and I kind of heated it up and I drove this down in there and then I welded it. Now, the end of it is kind of beat up because the T-posts have those little studs on them. So I still use this one and I like it a lot. But if I had it to do over again, I would make it out of some heavier pipe than that. This is, like I said, just conduit. Now this one, this is a beast. This thing was my grandfather's, and my uncle, who was his son, worked at a factory and they made him this thing. And the pipe is like 1/4 inch steel pipe. And I don't know how much steel they put in this end of it. But this thing is super heavy, which comes in really handy where I live, because if I'm driving a T-post and it stops dead and won't go any farther, you put this thing up on it and slam it down a few times and it's going again. So it does work good. But anyway, so I thought I'd take just a second to talk about how you might make one of these things. If I had it to do over again, what I would do is I'd get me a sledgehammer head, and then I would get probably a smaller diameter pipe, a little bit heavier around, not much, because then you're back to this gigantic one here that's really heavy. And I don't know why you couldn't just butt it against the end and just weld it on there really well, because the pipe, all it's doing is guiding that post for this to hit it. So I don't know that you're really going to have that much force on that weld right there. Anyway, I'd be interested to know, do any of y'all have homemade T-post drivers? Probably not. You probably just buy one. They're not very involved. So, you buy one and it'll last you forever. There's not a lot of moving parts to them. Unless you loan it out, who loans it out to somebody else and they use it like a sledgehammer. How do you do that? How do you take something, a tool, knock the handles off of it, beat it completely to pieces, and then you just return it that way? You don't say, hey, I have completely destroyed your tool. How about I buy you a new one? Where can I go get one just like it to replace it for you? Because it wasn't like he hit it 3 or 4 times on the side. It was hundreds. I mean, that's how he must have driven all of his T-posts, because it was just completely mangled. Anyway, I should get over that rant right there. Okay, so hope this was interesting to you. Thank you for watching.